Good morning. Wow, if that doesn't get you pumped up. This year's IMA Summit keynote speaker, John McDonough, President and CEO of the National Hockey League Chicago Blackhawks, is here with us to share an inspiring message of engaging audiences for outstanding business success. Through McDonough's guidance under what Forbes magazine has called the greatest sports business turnaround ever, the Chicago Blackhawks have revitalized the team's profile and re-energized its fan base. Since McDonough joined the Blackhawks, the team won 3 Stanley Cup titles, 2010, 2013, and 2015, becoming the first organization in the NHL salary cap era with 3 championships. Please welcome to the stage IMA President Ted Moravec, and from the Chicago Blackhawks, John McDonough.
Years, I gotta kind of pull myself together after seeing the video and being up here. But I'm Ted Moravec, and I'm delighted to welcome John McDonough, President and CEO of the Chicago Blackhawks, to the stage. John, welcome to the Incentive Marketing Association.
Thank you, Ted. My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's roll the clock back to 2007.
Can we roll the clock back to last night? Because I actually got here last night and I saw a group of social Olympians in the lobby. And they looked like they were just getting started and they were going to go late, and I heard that they did. I don't think I could keep up with these people.
Give it up for the IMA.
Yeah.
So turn the clock back to 2007. You're president of the Chicago Cubs. A team with a nationwide following, an absolutely passionate local fan base that packs iconic Wrigley Field. You've got a great national television contract. You're the darlings of everywhere. The Blackhawks at that time were a distant 5th in a great sports city with 5 major league teams. Rarely sold out the United Center, didn't even broadcast their home games on TV. A couple of generations of Hawk fans had lost interest in the team and kind of drifted away. What on earth were you thinking at that time?
Well, I think temporary insanity would be one of the potential answers. The other answer is, I think for all of us in this room, there comes an epiphany, an opportunity in your life, no matter how good things are going, where you have an obligation to take inventory and possibly reinvent yourself. Like try to do something that in the scope here in Chicago, you could play a micro-fractional role in helping bring back a franchise that was more or less a rumor that had been off the radar. So I was offered the job as president and CEO of the Chicago Blackhawks, and I have 2 sisters. I have no brothers, but I have a lot of very close friends. And I tapped into those close friends to say, look, I'm thinking of leaving the Cubs to join the Chicago Blackhawks. Do any of you know what 45 seconds of dead silence sounds like on the other end of the phone? That is exactly what I received, followed by profanity and "Are you out of your mind?" But the more that they thought that that idea wasn't feasible, it was not a good career move for their friend, the more inspired I became. I wasn't comfortable with the Cubs. I had 9 different positions with the Cubs. Finally ascended to 2007. We won the National League Central that year. But I met with Rocky Wirtz, and someone that just changed my life, and I believed in him. And he talked about the autonomy and the independence, and to try something that, look, the Blackhawks were at that point, they just weren't in a position. They weren't filling the building. They weren't on the right path. There was no system. There was no process. So most of my family members bought in. There were a few dissenters, but I was in Florida one morning for some Major League Baseball meetings, and I called my wife and I said, "What do you think?" She said, "Do what makes you happy," and I made the decision.
Fantastic. When you walked through the door on that first day, What struck you as the critical things that you needed to do to motivate the employees?
Well, the press conference was interesting because the press conference was basically most of the people that I knew from baseball, and I had just had a press conference in the morning at Wrigley Field and then went to the United Center. But I told our assembled staff after the press conference, the pace is going to be swifter, the expectations are going to be higher, we're going to do something that has never been done before, and I need you on board. And I think at that point, there were a fair number of people, and everybody in this room, we read body language for a living. That's what we do. If we're marketers or we're selling, we read body language. There was a fair number of people you could tell that just checked out. I don't want any part of this. This is going to be a different journey. So we had to make really difficult, unpopular decisions on popular people, and we got the show on the road.
Were there lessons from the success that the Cubs had had that you were able to bring into play in those early days with the Hawks?
Absolutely. I believe this, Ted. I believe this strongly, that hiring is the most underrated, yet important executive skill that there is. Mm-hmm. We had to start whatever term, there's a lot of intellectuals in this room, whatever the term would be before scratch, we had to start before scratch. We had to start everything over. So it was making changes with people, bringing in the right people. I love underdogs. The world embraces underdogs. I like people that have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, that are high achievers, that want to be part of something that had never been done before. So that really was the model that I had given to our human resource person, the brilliant Marie Sutera. I said, bring me great, but I need collaborators. We have 2 rules within our organization. 2 rules. 2 rules. I'm not stuck necessarily on when people get there or when they leave and they have family obligations. 2 rules. Be great at your job and pull for each other. That's it.
Fantastic. This probably is a lead in here as why Forbes magazine said it, but as noted in the video and on the intro, Forbes had labeled the revitalization of the Blackhawks as the greatest sports business turnaround ever. Can you spend just a few minutes talking on some of the multiple tasks that you were challenged with? First, you had to build a motivated front office. You had to rebuild fan loyalty. Obviously, you had to put a winning product on the ice, and you had to engage the community. How did you attack each of those challenges?
Well, regarding the Forbes article, I'm not necessarily a sentimentalist. I don't reminisce a lot, and that was a number of years ago. It's flattering, but it's not necessarily something I want our staff to get caught up in, because they said that happened, it was flattering, move on. It's like when we won our 3 Stanley Cups, the following Monday, it's let's get back to work and let's get back onto the journey. But we had to build a culture of accountability, collaboration. The business operation and the hockey operation work together. There are no secrets. There's trust that has never been breached. So at a very high level and throughout the organization, I look at every one of our employees as stockholders. They're investors. And in order to be successful, we have approximately a 4% turnover rate every year.
Of the employees?
Of the employees.
Wow.
And we had at one point 71 employees under 30 years old that had 3 Stanley Cup rings. But in order to keep these young employees, and this is critical, Ted, you have to recognize and reward achievement. The worst thing that could happen is you've got high achievers. Work together, pull for each other. But I say to Marie and her staff all the time, I want to know who the stars are. I want to make sure that we're recognizing and rewarding achievement, because if you don't recognize and reward achievement, they're going to have other options. They're going to leave. I want this to be potentially the most enriching experience of their life that could potentially be a springboard to something else or within our organization.
Talk about the fan base and the community of how we got that back going with the Blackhawks.
Winning is the greatest marketing idea of all time. We've all come up with, we've all had great ideas. And I just recently gave the commencement speech at DePaul, and I asked these people to invent and create, and the reason something hasn't been done before, if it crossed your mind, is because you haven't presented it. It's your idea. I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of being creative, being unique, being different. The fan base gave us a chance when maybe we didn't deserve it. We put the games on television. When I was with the Chicago Cubs for 24 years on WGN TV, our games went into 80 million homes on the Superstation. We were baseball's answer to all my children. We played during the day. General Hospital would probably be more contemporary. But we played during the day. We had very little competition. We went through Canada, the United States, and it would kind of be in parts of the country, it would be over lunch, we watched the Cub games. So we would travel on the road, and it was like traveling with a rock band because of WGN TV. Coming to the Blackhawks, we televised our road games, but did not televise our home games. That was conditional of my coming over there. And the credit for all of this, the success that we've had. And by the way, the timing on these are great. We haven't lost a game in 3 months, so I sound so much smarter this morning. But the credit for all of this goes to Rocky Wirtz, our chairman and our owner, because he had the courage to go completely against the grain of his father, who ran the team, and he decided to go in a completely opposite direction in a lot of different areas, but he hired a baseball guy to run a hockey team. And that's not easy for him, and it hasn't been easy for me.
Wow, that's fantastic. As this starts to evolve, what parts of it came quicker than you expected? What parts took a little longer?
It was all, the first 3 or 4 years, because of the change, I was riveted, lasered into trying to get the system and the process right. If you get the system and the process and the people right, you hire the right people. You hire overachievers, people who are hungry, people who want to be part of something that is never been done before. If you have a good process, you have a good system, the results are going to come. I think people in our industry get caught up, very often they get caught up. They talk about the end result. They go right to the importance of winning, and sometimes they lose track of how to get there. In order to get there, there's a way and how you make decisions. I've hired the youngest general manager that's ever won a Stanley Cup in Stan Bowman. Mm-hmm. We just hired the youngest head coach in the National Hockey League in Jeremy Colleton. I like young, dynamic, enthusiastic people. I like that, the beauty of youth. And you realize shortly after some of these meetings that you're in now, when they go deep on social media, I'm at a point now in my career at 66. I age in Cubs and Blackhawks years, so this is why I look like this. But in some of these meetings, you pray to God they don't ask your opinion because you have no idea what they're talking about. You've all been there, come on. Either with your kids or in a staff meeting, they start going to the 10th floor, the 11th floor, you're gone. You're nodding your head like, I hear you. I got it. And start writing something down that makes no sense at all.
At 67, I feel your pain. The journey's accelerating. When did you first be able to sit back a little bit and go, yeah, this is starting to work? When did you start to feel comfortable that it was paying off?
Never. Nobody in this room is
Stanley Cups and you couldn't.
No. we sold out Wrigley Field for the better part of 24 years. It's become a mecca, a destination. It's like a Norman Rockwell painting. It's like a cathedral of baseball, and it's a great product. But there's never a point where I think once you stop to admire what you achieved, you've stopped. And anytime you stop, it's tough to get started again. I don't look back on that. I have as much fun as anybody else, but I don't sit back and reflect and wow, we've had 497 sellouts in a row, and we've won 3 Stanley Cups and gone to the Western Conference Final. Because within all of that now, the target on our back grows bigger every year.
Yep.
Every year it grows bigger. We haven't won a playoff game in 2 years. It's been challenging. We had to make a change. We had to fire a head coach that is the second winningest coach in the history of the National Hockey League, in Joel Quenneville. He is going to the Hall of Fame the day that he retires. He's the best coach I've ever been affiliated with. But it's these really tough, some people call heartless, cold-blooded decisions. It's not fun at all. But you have an obligation to our fans. You have an obligation to the staff, to the city of the Chicago and the NHL. But no, there's not really a lot of time where we sit back and admire anything that we've done. We're on to the next season right away.
Wow, that's a great lesson. 3 Stanley Cups and you never, yes, that's a fantastic
The staff loves
lesson.
me.
Yeah, I bet. We all share something with you. Everybody in this room is part of the world of building loyalty. That's what incentives and recognition are for. You have multiple loyalty challenges. You have staff loyalty to the organizational goals. You have player loyalty to the direction of the coaching staff. And you have fan loyalty. Are there common aspects of each of those groups that you can leverage? And are there unique aspects of each of those 3 audiences?
Well, I'll touch on the staff and I'll touch on the fans. First of all, with the staff, you've got to let those people know that you want them to succeed and you love them. You want them to be successful personally and professionally. You want to put them in the best spot that you can. I'm a big fan of remembering people's names, remembering their kids' names, humanizing and personalizing relationships. We are not necessarily in the marketing business or in the sports business. Everybody in this room, we are in the people business. That is what we do. We're in the relationship business, and you've got to create that bond. As far as the fans are concerned, if they truly believe, Ted, if they truly believe you are committed to sustained success, that you're doing everything you possibly can to win, they will believe in you. If there is a hiccup or a sense they're not committed, you're going to have challenges. But in our organization, and it doesn't, here would be if there was an axiom or a motto in our business, it could be true in all of your respective businesses. Whatever you think is going to happen probably isn't. So in your mind's eye, a meeting, a presentation, a sales meeting of some sort, a marketing meeting, creative ideas, in your mind you're saying, okay, this is how this is going to go. Do me a favor going forward at the end of your day, see if that's exactly how it went. There's audibles, there's changes, things happen. Expect the unexpected, buckle up for that roller coaster ride and enjoy it.
Just a question. How do you define who your customer is?
Our customer, a lot of people want to, I've got a son that's in the agency business with J. Walter Thompson and another son that's in the music business, and they talk about demographics all the time, and whatever 18 to 54 means, I have no idea. Why 54? Why 18? Why does something, I don't know. Everybody is a potential fan. There's no we don't lock out any demographic. We try to have mass appeal. We try to introduce the game to everybody. Because of all of the major sports between basketball, football, baseball, and hockey kind of comes with a with a rules manual. They're not as familiar as they are with the other sports. So when the Blackhawks came on the scene and we made we acquired some free agents, and you hired a great coach, and now all of a sudden they're winning and they're going to the conference finals and they're winning Stanley Cups. It really gets people's attention. But the most important part of that is sustaining and, Ted, never taking anything for granted. On my tombstone, it might say, there's no such thing as an easy sale. I hear that all the time. Well, that was easy, you won. Any of you, raise your hand if any part of your responsibility on the day-to-day basis has anything to do with selling. There's a lot of hands in there. I don't believe there's any easy sale. Something could happen even after they say yes. That's happened to all of us. They've committed, they changed their mind, something happened. You've got to work at it, and part of that is the relationship game. And making sure that ultimately they buy you. Are they buying the Blackhawks? I think so. They're buying the players. That's what it's all about. But they're buying a belief in you that you're going to try to take us to the promised land again.
Let me just ask you something that kind of popped into my head as you were talking. The Indian head sweater is the iconic, probably one of the greatest sports logos there is. There's a rich history of the Hawks that go back decades and decades. One of the things that the Hawks did was create the ambassador program to re-engage the fan base with some of the past greats of the Blackhawks. Can you talk a little bit about the role that the history and that ambassador program does in connecting with the fans?
Sure. We needed, when Ted is talking about ambassadors, we had originally players, Bobby Hull, the late Stan Mikita, Tony Esposito, all Hall of Famers, Dennis Savard, and now Chris Chelios. If you do not build a bridge between your past and your present, you're going to lose the rhythm of the entire organization, because fans' allegiance in many ways, they're based on memories. They're based on experiences when I was younger and my grandfather took me to a game, or my mother took me to a game, or my grandmother took me to a game, whatever it might be. Well, these people, these iconic players, had been estranged from the Blackhawks for decades and decades and decades. So Rocky and I felt on day one, we had to reach out, bring them back in a very respectful, dignified fashion, and be part of our organization. Welcome them back. These people who had previously been Blackhawks fans, that's who I remember. And we've done that recently. Patrick Sharp and Adam Burrish and Brian Campbell and so many other players that were part of our Stanley Cup championships. I love having the former players come back. I love hiring them if I can, bringing them into the fold, because I do. It sounds corny and syrupy and the rest of it. I look at this as a family. I mean, a very dysfunctional family. It's dysfunctional. It's just like everything else. But we have these people. I'm thrilled that they're here, and I think they've built a lot of definition to our franchise.
I think it's one of the greatest things that was done with this. You mentioned a number of times the recognition. How specifically do you recognize superior performance in your employee base?
On a regular basis, on a very, very regular basis. I spend, our human resource person, Marie Sutera, sits right here. My brilliant assistant, Jillian Smith, is in the room today, who's been with me since day one, who makes all of this happen, who basically runs the Blackhawks and is my boss. Would she please stand up? Jillian Smith, where are you? Way in the back of the room, right there. But recognizing and rewarding achievement is the best way to make sure that morale is high, that people are treated well. When we promote people and we send out these emails, I know those emails go right to their husband or their wife or their parents or their grandparents or their children or whatever. I want them to feel good about coming to work every day. We face challenges head on, but if I'm asking them to work games, weekends, nights, off season. We have a convention this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in downtown Chicago where 12 to 15,000 Blackhawks fans descend on the city for a 3-day convention, which is a celebration of our franchise, and our entire staff is going to be there. So making sure they feel wanted, making sure that they feel as if their contributions really matter on a regular basis. And I impart this to all of our department heads, that invest in people. I think Stan Bowman is a brilliant general manager.
Absolutely.
I think Jeremy Colleton is a great head coach. I think we've got Jay Blanc who runs our business operation. But I constantly tell them, invest in the human element, invest in these people. Let them know how you feel about them. Take time for them. We're all busy, even between periods. If I'm going back to my office for something and I see somebody over there, I'm not going to breeze past them. Even if I just touch them on the back or, how you doing? How's your night tonight? Everything going well? I want them to be recognized because I care about them.
Terrific. Absolutely terrific. Let's talk about you for a little bit. Let's discuss communications. What's your personal communication style, and has that evolved over a career's worth of learning?
It's really changed, Ted. My communication style has really changed. I think for most of my career, I was in the middle of the scrum. I was kind of the guy that everything kind of went through, and my fingerprints had to be on it, and the decision wouldn't be made unless I stamped it. But as you get deeper into your career and you get a little bit older, you recognize what I had said before. The most important executive skill is hiring, collaboration, making sure that they're working together and making the best decision that they possibly can. I'm at a point in my career now. Tomorrow we're having something called, with all of our hockey people, our annual hockey summit. Our scouts, our head coach, our general manager, our VP of hockey operations, our owner, and it's a 7-hour event to talk about our business. And I think that's extremely healthy. So it's important that we really understand each other. And I think the fact that the hockey operations and the business operations group work so well together, everybody's got to be on the same playing field. I can't have a hierarchy because these people, their names are in the paper more and they might be higher compensated or they might have the greatest risk of termination. They don't respect or communicate with people over here. But at this stage of my career, curiously, I've just been thinking about this lately. I can't say I'm real happy about it. You hire these really bright people. They do very well, extremely well, highly decorated. All of a sudden you realize some of those meetings you used to get invited to, you're not invited anymore. And like they used to need your opinion, like before we run with this, we wanted to check this out. So I'm probably reading more press releases than I've ever done before. But that's just the beauty of the growth of watching people mature, empowering them, enabling them to make decisions, the major decisions I'm involved in. But they need to understand they completely have my support. But I challenge people every day. Status quo is completely unacceptable. There's a higher level every day, but we can do that while we enjoy our jobs at the same time.
I think you just led into the next question is, as a leader, are there a certain set of ideals that you maintain, and have those evolved over that career as well?
The ideals that I maintain are probably, let's have fun doing this. We have an obligation to, whether in the general public or whether we're the United Center, to be available, always be willing to engage with our fan base, treat your employees with the highest respect. there's also something that's been with me since day one that was drilled into me from my parents. They didn't say it necessarily in these terms. Be interesting and be interested. By be interesting, be well read. Be informed about things that don't relate to hockey or baseball or basketball or football or golf or soccer or whatever it might be, but know a lot about what's going on globally. Don't get locked into just hockey. So be interesting. Be able to spar with people on different things and respect other people's opinion and listen. But when I say be interested, a lot of people will come up to me and they'll talk about the Cubs for the 24 years there, or they'll talk about the 3 Stanley Cups with the Blackhawks. And after about 30 or 40 seconds, I try to pivot. I try to pivot the conversation, and I try to introduce the 5 most important words in any conversation. Please tell me about you. You learn nothing when you talk about yourself. You learn nothing. So if someone wants to ask me about the Cubs or the Blackhawks or whatever, I'm more than happy to go into it, but they can read a lot of those things. I'm really interested in where are you from? Tell me about your family. And I think the conversation flows a lot easier. And it's much more respectful when the conversation ends, that if you're talking to 3 or 4 different people, do the best you can to remember their names. We all get caught up sometimes. Like if there's 3 or 4 of us together, you kind of say your name and you don't remember the other people's names. I guarantee you, you're never going to forget your own name. I'm probably getting to the point where I'm getting the closest, but you won't forget your own name. So try to concentrate on the 3 or 4 other people, and you'll be amazed when you shake hands with all of them at the end of a very short conversation that you had for the first time, that you called them by their name. It's an interesting pivot. Make these conversations be about them.
That is fantastic advice. Awesome. Let's kind of shift the perspective a little bit. In the world of sports, when you look across the NHL, you look across Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, what are the other teams out there that you admire that have successfully pulled off what you strive to do with the Blackhawks?
Interesting question. I admire other teams. I think emulation is lazy. I think emulation can be lazy. That if all of a sudden you say, well, look, we're going to use their script, we're going to do what they do. I want our people to be innovators, to do things our way, and not necessarily just because something, now we might use it, but I encourage innovation first. I admire every team because this is a common theme in our industry. Whatever cities that you're from, or whatever frustrations you feel about the team that you're closest to, it's really hard to win. It is really hard to win. The 3 Stanley Cups that we've won, there's 4 series. It's like 4 heavyweight fights. You've got to have talent. You've got to have breaks. You've got to have officiating. Some supernatural things have to happen in order for you to win. A lot of things have to go your way. So it's not easy, but I'm not a big fan of, hey, in Boston, or hey, in Pittsburgh, or did you see what LA did? I'm impressed and amazed, and they're my friends, and I appreciate that. I want people to look at the Chicago Blackhawks kind of on the reverse. I want them to look at how we run our organization. I want us to be innovators. It's going to be the theme of tomorrow's meeting, actually. I want us, and I'm looking at something right here that's at IMA Summit, Innovate, Motivate, Activate. I love it. I want us to be innovators.
Excellent. We keep talking about the 3 Stanley Cups in the span of 6 seasons. That set the bar pretty high, and you build an expectation level within the organization. You build an expectation level within the fan base. The last couple of years, as you said, haven't won a playoff game.
I've already said that, Ted. I'm not sure you.
Hey, believe me, I'm as pained as you. In fact, challenged to even make the playoffs. With those expectations being so high, has that changed what you've had to do when you've been at the mountaintop?
It does. It's constantly evolving. We change every day. We made a tough decision on a head coach. We've made 9 personnel decisions during the offseason. Drafting and developing are the most important aspects of our game. We just drafted a first-round pick, 3rd overall. Kirby Doc, 6'4", 198 pounds, probably going to be around 215, 220 when it's all done. Highly skilled. We shored up our goaltending and defense, and we have to be able to change and have to be fluid. It's hard to win. I'm not going to get into the salary cap. We have a finite amount of money that we can spend on our roster, and because of our owner, we spend to the very cap every single year. But after a period of time, that salary cap is going to catch up to you, because when you succeed and you have superstar players, we have 4 players on our current roster that are mortal locks to go to the Hall of Fame, and a former head coach. Forgetting the head coach for a second, those players are going to be paid, and a number of other complementary players. So you have to make sure that you get it right on the complementary players, and that the contracts that you extend these players are for the right amount, for the right term, while drafting and developing young players. So it's always evolving. I will give you a good example. Is anybody here from St. Louis? Good for you. Good for you. On January, stand up. On January 1st, the St. Louis Blues had the worst record in the National Hockey League. The worst record in the National Hockey League. The year or 2 before, the Rams left for Los Angeles. Very familiar with St. Louis. I'm there a lot. It was a kick in the gut. It was a really hard thing to overcome. The St. Louis Blues, who were dead last in the NHL, won the Stanley Cup. So getting back to what I said earlier, whatever you think is going to happen probably isn't. And when you talk about the talent level in sports, in the NHL, it's as evenly distributed as any league possible. The salary cap has now been in effect for about 14 years. You have about the same amount of talent on every team. Each team probably has 2 or 3 superstars, a lot of other very, very critical pieces, very good goaltending. But who gets hot at the right time is probably going to win the Stanley Cup. And the regular season doesn't even resemble the postseason. It's hitting, it's intense, every game, every night, and you get on kind of a roll, and confidence does amazing things for you. So yes, we have embraced change and made changes, and we're doing everything we can.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
You've asked me a few, yeah.
Who are you pulling for, Blues or Bruins?
I can't say who I'm pulling for because I have friends on all the teams. I was happy those were the 2 teams that were in the finals. Some of my best friends work for those 2 teams. But I will say this, I'm very happy for St. Louis. I'm very happy for the city of St. Louis, very happy for the Blues. They had never won. Yeah. The St. Louis Blues had never won before. So good for them. Now it's our turn again.
Yeah. Yes, as working for a company that's headquartered in St. Louis, but being a Blackhawk fan, it was fun to watch them have it. We have time to take some questions from the audience. So, John, thank you very much for answering my questions and,
You're welcome.
and going through this. But in the audience, there's a microphone that's going to be passed around. We've got somebody who's manning it. I can't really see through the lights here. But just raise your hand, and we'll get the mic to you. And we've got a few minutes to take some time.
I've done this before. This is always dangerous.
Anybody? Come on. We got some Chicago fans here. Get the mic. We've got some over here. Who's ever got the mic? It's coming up behind you.
Right here.
Can I ask myself a question? Why am I the last man on planet Earth that still wears a tie? I don't really know.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. I'm a Tampa Bay Lightning season ticket holder, and whenever the Blackhawks come to town, it's the toughest ticket in town, so you're doing something right.
Thank you. Yeah, we travel well, as they say, we come heavy. Tampa Bay, great franchise. Jeff Vinik, world-class owner, what he's done for that city. John Cooper, great head coach. There, what is your name? Rich. There is an example of the Tampa Bay Lightning, I believe, had the second best record in the history of the National Hockey League in the regular season. Is that correct? Tied for first. They were swept in the first round. Swept. So there's no answer. There's no, it doesn't, none of this makes any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. We beat Tampa to win our third Stanley Cup here in Chicago. It's a great franchise. They continue to excel at a very, very high level, and I'm sure their time will come. Yes, sir.
Hello. So I was texting.
What is your name?
Scott.
Scott?
I am a Milwaukee Brewers fan. So I will just start with that. But I was texting my buddy who is a big Cubs, Blackhawks, Bears fan, and told him that you were speaking here. And he told me to ask you about the guest conductor and the process that you were the one that actually implemented that with Harry Carey's passing. And, you know, that's certainly one of the most prestigious pieces that as a baseball fan, I can definitely take great honor in seeing all the awesome, seventh inning stretch pieces that have happened and some of the more memorable ones where we go, uh-oh, we're shaking our head. But if you could just walk us through that process of leading up to it and just kind of, as you take a step back and see where it's evolved to, what it's done for the Cubs and, maybe even how it ties into some of the things you did for the Blackhawks.
Thank you, Scott, for that question. I get emotional when I talk about this a little bit. I really enjoyed my time with the Cubs, my 24 years there, and one of the things that Scott is referring to, Harry Carey passed away in 1998, renowned Hall of Fame broadcaster, very charismatic, live it up, the meter's running. It's later than you think. He enjoyed life. He squeezed more out of life than any person I've ever met. But for whatever reason, he took a very personal liking to me at a very young age. I was in my 20s. And here's this Hall of Fame broadcaster. My responsibilities evolved over all the years in marketing and business operations and broadcasting. And we just hit it off and socialize together and do some things together. And so part of Harry's tradition was to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game at Wrigley Field. He was the band leader to 40,000 people every single day. Bad singer, really bad, but the people loved it. He loved it. And he couldn't get enough attention and adoration from all of that. And then in February of 1998, February 14th, he passes away. So the task of, okay, now what do we do? And I felt, because Harry would tell me stories about him meeting Elvis and him meeting Frank Sinatra and all of the celebrities that he met, I thought it would be a tremendous honor and an homage to him to have celebrities sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. That started in 1998. It's a tradition that is still alive. They've had the greatest of the greats, some not so great. But the fabric of it right now is who's pitching today and who's singing. And, I'm very proud of it. They've done a wonderful job marketing it. It goes nationally when they're on WGN TV. I think when someone comes into Chicago, I think that's probably one of the highest forms of flattery that you can be asked to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. So it appears as if it's a tradition that they're going to keep, but it was really a tribute and an honor. There were a lot of bad ideas. There were a lot of bad ideas. There were a lot of bad ideas. I had the chairman of Trivia Company calling me at spring training and say, "What are you thinking? When are you going to have an answer?" And I had inbound. I had to field a lot of bad ideas from people, and I had to respectfully say that's not going to work. So we gave this a shot, and I think it's been a big success, and hopefully it's a tradition. Every time I see it on TV, which is quite often during the baseball season, it brings back very warm memories of a wonderful, wonderful time in my life. So thank you.
Mr. McDonough, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your success.
What is your name?
My name is Ira Ozer,
Ira.
Engagement Partners. And it's really wonderful for all of us to hear from a CEO who believes in the power of people and invests in people. And my question is this: you talk about the importance of recognition and innovation. Do you have formal programs to guide management through that? And technologies that support it, or is it just culturally driven?
Did you have to ask about the technologies, Ira? Was that I thought we covered that part. Like,
rescind the question. Is it formal process, or is it just part of the culture?
It's part of the culture. I met with Marie yesterday, for example. And it's not necessarily, we're just, hey, can we catch up on things? Tell me what's going on. Tell me about the bounce. I like to see bounce in an organization. I like to see happy people. I like to hear laughter, the cacophony of laughter in an organization. I don't want to be walking in an area and all of a sudden people lock up because I'm around. I want to hear laughter. I think laughter inspires innovation. People feel comfortable. So it's just constantly, it's that theme of recognize, reward, making sure that people who are contributing at a very high level and efforting. We have a lot of grinders. We have a lot of grinders that are doing everything they can to succeed. And we have to make sure and ensure that they know that they're an important part of the organization. Do titles matter? Absolutely. Anybody that ever tells you titles don't matter, I don't subscribe to that. Compensation matters. The compensation, or the combination of titles and compensation really matters. But also, we have 4 staff meetings a year, all staff meetings. Owner, president, general manager, 238 employees, and we touch everything, every aspect, because I need them to be informed. We talk about communication in a lot of organizations. People will say, I didn't hear that till it was released, or I heard that on the radio, or I heard that there was a rumor, I saw it online. And I can't have our people find things out that way. So I think part of that, we have staff meetings every week with our management group, and then 4 times a year with our entire staff. And then we're together every single night during the season, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, David from Montreal. Season ticket holder.
With the Canadians or the Blackhawks?
No comment. I have a comment and then a question. First off, I'm a little irked you took Andrew Shaw back. That's the comment. The question is, what advice would you have for Jeff Molson to bring another Original Six team back to its former glory?
The only advice that Jeff Molson of the Molson beer family, the only advice an owner of the Montreal Canadiens, and they hired our assistant general manager, Mark Bergevin, as their general manager. The advice that I would give to Jeff Molson, the owner of the Montreal Canadiens, would be the same advice I would give Tom Ricketts, owner of the Cubs, or George McCaskey, my classmate at Notre Dame High School in Niles. The only advice I would give them is don't take advice from John McDonough. That would be it. I mean, they have the richest tradition in hockey. What am I going to tell them?
We got Brian Dunn in the middle there.
Hello,
Hi, John.
Brian.
I just wanted to prove you're not the only guy left with a tie, so there's the
Oh, way to go, Brian.
tie-wearing Hunger Games. There's
Thank
the
you.
2 of us left.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the conversation. I'm intrigued how you've moved from one sport to another. We would never see a guy who's at the pinnacle of a sort of, let's say, rugby coach or a rugby manager ever moving sport. So to move from baseball to ice hockey, how unimportant is it that you spend a life in that particular game?
Thank you for the question, Brian. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Because when you walk in and now you're around hockey players and hockey management, the first thing that they think, and rightfully so, is what does this guy know about our sport? So there's an enormous credibility gap. And you can sense it. This guy's a short-termer. He's not going to be around long. Why did Rocky bring this guy in? So you had to fight that. And then you got to a point where you're tired of fighting it. And in order to eradicate that, you've got to make changes. You've got to make changes. Because if everybody's not on board, it's not going to work. Coming from baseball, a completely different culture. Again, our game's going to 80 million homes, 162 times a year. It's one of the iconic franchises in the world. In the world. You go to the Blackhawks, which they needed change. They needed seismic change to bring them back. That was the single biggest being accepted. But I got tired of trying to be accepted. Then when you get tired of that, you bring in people that you're not going to have to fight that fight every day. But thank you. That's very, very astute. So where you're talking about rugby and where, Brian? Yeah, that would never happen. They would never, I should never apply for a job running a rugby team or a soccer team. That was my last dream that I was holding out for. That would never happen.
No, don't go.
Thank you for the question.
Sorry. It's Jason. How are you doing?
Hi, Jason.
Nice. My main question is actually about loyalty. They say the most loyal fans in sports is hockey fans. And I was here, and I don't live in Chicago anymore, but I was here when you couldn't give a Blackhawk ticket away, even though you knew there was tens of thousands of jerseys out there. So how did you get the switch to come as fast as it did? Obviously, broadcasting home games is one of them. But the other one is that how could we learn from that loyalty that hockey has within our own businesses as well?
Hockey fans are extremely loyal. It's been said, I don't necessarily agree with this, that hockey is the biggest niche sport in the world. That is it as big as the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball. But the fans that are hockey fans are loyalists, and they are committed. I have been to some cities, Montreal. I've been to some cities where hockey is a religion. It's a religion. It's all about their team. So that built-in allegiance is there. We had to come in with something completely different. We had to try something that was so unfamiliar. Putting our games on TV, playing outdoor games at Wrigley Field. We started the season 10 years ago that when we won the Stanley Cup. We played in Switzerland and Finland. This year we open up our season in Berlin, and then we go to Prague. And you know, I said earlier, winning is the greatest marketing idea of all time. But them believing that this organization is committed to winning, we talk about the consistent excellence all of the time. And I think from a social media standpoint, which I won't go deep on, but all of those things really matter. I think we're at the forefront of all of those things, investing in our fan base. We're having a convention this weekend in the middle of the summer where virtually every player on our active roster and most, if not all of the great players in the history of our franchise will be there, available, approachable, humanizing, interacting with all of our fans so they can be proud. They can be proud of their allegiance. People ask me, what is the greatest moment during your time with the Blackhawks. You know what? I'm taking this off right now. It wasn't winning the Stanley Cups. Oh, I think, did the mic go with it?
Yeah, it must have fallen on your shirt, but it's talking to your stomach.
Here you go. Is that better? It wasn't so much winning the Stanley Cup. 2009, when we started maybe our 15th or 20th sellout in a row of the 497 we have now, somebody in the 300 level in the top tier unfurled a banner, and it caught my eye. And it was the moment, regardless of how long I've been with the Blackhawks, this will be my favorite moment. So now we're going in the right direction. The fans are buying in. We haven't won a cup yet, but they sense the earth is moving a little bit. Something different's going on here. I think we want to be part of this. But I would say to Rocky periodically, our owner, I hope they're feeling what I'm feeling, because this thing's coming back strong. So we're up 3 or 4 to 1 in the third period. And someone unfurled a banner, and it was a bed sheet. It was enormous. And it was just, the pride is back. That hit me. There are certain things that just touch us, right? There are certain things that people say. I took my granddaughter Riley to see The Lion King on Sunday. That really hit me. Just the fact she and I were there together watching The Lion King. She kept telling me to be quiet in the theater. She's 3.5 years old. That really hit me. But when they unfurled that banner and they said the pride is back, it's like we're on the same frequency now. We get where you're going, and that's before we won. So I hope that answers your question.
Let's end it on that one. That was a
Well, this gentleman has a question.
We got one more quick. Got time for one quick question.
Zach Allen from Seattle. Quick comment and a question. Quick comment is, when I mentioned to my boss, who's a huge Blackhawks fan, that you were speaking, he asked that I remind you that next season is your last chance to get the 4th Stanley Cup in 10 years. So he's like that excited.
Does that mean I'm gone if we don't?
No. He's excited.
That sounds like the way he phrased it.
He's excited for you to make it happen. And
my contract goes beyond next year. He might know something I don't know.
So Glenville's.
My question is, coming from Seattle, which is going to be a new hockey town here soon, any feedback or advice for kind of a new up-and-coming hockey city to kind of embrace the sport?
I think Mr. Lewicki is overseeing that franchise. I think Seattle is going to be solid gold. What a great decision by the NHL to bring in Las Vegas. What a great decision by the NHL to go to Seattle. They don't have a name yet. They don't have a name. They have a building. They're working on Key Arena. Is that correct? And when that's done, that's going to be a state-of-the-art facility. I think Seattle is going to be a model franchise within a period of time. That region, that era, that city deserves it. Great decision by the NHL, and I'm very, very happy for Seattle. But you better find out what your boss meant. Because that sounded more like a threat than a question.
Oh. John, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time here this morning.
Thank you.
I gotta say, this is one of the best kickoffs to an IMA summit that I have been to. Thank you very, very much. This is terrific. On behalf of the IMA, we have a gift of appreciation, courtesy of Seiko Watch Company of America. Take a moment to read this when you get it, but we have a very special gift for you from Seiko.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you.
Terrific.
Sure.